In the heart of Victorian London, where poverty festers and desperation thrives, the streets of Whitechapel become a hunting ground. It is here, amidst the filth and shadows, that a figure emerges from obscurity, destined to be both feared and immortalized. On August 31st, 1888, Mary Ann Nichols, commonly known as Polly, was found dead in Bucks Row, Whitechapel. At the time of her death, Polly was struggling with poverty, a reality common to many women in Whitechapel. She had spent her last days wandering the streets, looking for shelter and food. Earlier that evening, Polly had been turned away from a lodging house because she didn't have the fourpence needed for a bed. Later that evening, Polly's body was discovered at approximately 3:40 a.m. by Charles Cross, a cart driver, and another man, Robert Paul. The two men initially thought she was merely unconscious or drunk. Upon closer inspection, they realized the severity of the situation and alerted the authorities. The police found Polly with her throat deeply slashed in two places. Further examination revealed gruesome injuries to her abdomen, including multiple stab wounds and a jagged cut. The mutilations indicated a deliberate and calculated act, suggesting the killer possessed a disturbing level of anatomical knowledge. This murder was the first in what would later be known as the canonical 5 murders attributed to Jack the Ripper.
This country for my children and my grandchildren, and saving this country for all of us. And I don't want to die. Nobody wants to die.
Polly's death sent shockwaves through the Whitechapel community, already struggling with overcrowding, poverty, and crime. Despite the brutality of the crime, the police were initially unprepared for the wave of fear and the media frenzy that would follow. Polly's loss of life set the stage for a series of killings that shared common traits: severe violent incident, precise wounds, and victims who were vulnerable women living on the margins of society. The case highlighted the dire social conditions of Victorian London and the neglect faced by its poorest citizens. They were more than their deaths. They were women with stories, with hopes. But in the eyes of society, their poverty overshadowed their humanity. In this scene, the frustration and chaos of the Jack the Ripper investigation come to life. The setting is a tense, crowded room in Scotland Yard, where detectives are visibly exhausted. The room is filled with maps and photos of Whitechapel, highlighting the complexity of the case. Inspector Aberline voices the immense pressure from the media and public, emphasizing the lack of progress despite their efforts. The conversation among investigators reveals the lack of concrete evidence against suspects like Druitt, Ostrog, and Kosminski, each with potential motives but no definitive proof. The scene captures the overwhelming nature of the investigation, hindered by the killer's anatomical knowledge and the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel. Meanwhile, the public's panic and misplaced accusations are shown through quick shots of mobs targeting innocent men and police patrolling aimlessly. The narrator underscores how fear and confusion paralyzed both the community and law enforcement, making the pursuit of the Ripper a nearly impossible task. This scene delves into the harsh realities of life in Whitechapel during Victorian times. It portrays a grim environment of overcrowded slums, sweatshops, and poverty-stricken streets where children play among filth. The narrator highlights the despair that defined the lives of the Ripper's victims, emphasizing how societal neglect left them vulnerable to violence. A poignant moment shows a woman sacrificing her last coin for a stale loaf of bread, her anxious demeanor reflecting the constant danger of the streets. The scene's mood is underscored by foreshadowing dialogue from a passerby, warning of lurking evil, which hints at the impending tragedy while encapsulating the pervasive fear of the community. The scene captures the explosion of media attention surrounding the Jack the Ripper case. A bustling printing press churns out sensational headlines like "Another Murder in Whitechapel" and "Is the Ripper Among Us?" The narrator emphasizes how the media's obsession with the case transformed the killer into a macabre legend. The infamous letter signed Jack the Ripper, though likely hoaxes, further fueled the hysteria. The focus shifts to a journalist casually penning lurid descriptions, symbolizing the media's prioritization of shock value over empathy. Amid the frenzy, the grief of the victims' families and the plight of the vulnerable women in Whitechapel are overshadowed, highlighting society's misplaced attention and indifference to human suffering. The climactic scene unfolds with Mary Jane Kelly alone in her modest, dimly lit room. She hums softly, her life steeped in struggle and survival, oblivious to the danger looming just outside her door. A flickering candle emphasizes the fragile serenity of the moment, but the tension builds as a shadowy figure approaches silently. The scene shifts to darkness as the candle extinguishes, followed by the chilling sound of faint footsteps fading into the night. At dawn, police arrive to a horrific scene of unprecedented brutality. The room is described as a scene of unspeakable horror, leaving even seasoned detectives stunned. Inspector Aberline's whisper, "This is beyond anything we've seen," encapsulates the terror and despair of the discovery. Outside, a crowd gathers, their faces etched with fear and morbid curiosity. This final act of violence marks the culmination of the Ripper's reign of terror and highlights the unresolved mystery that would haunt history. The juxtaposition of Mary Jane Kelly's last moments with the aftermath underscores the tragedy and brutality of her death, leaving a powerful impression of societal failure and vulnerability. As of now, no definitive evidence has surfaced to reveal Jack the Ripper's true identity. Despite extensive investigations, forensic advancements, and numerous theories, the mystery remains unsolved. The case continues to captivate historians and the legend of Jack criminologists, the Ripper
ensuring
its
endures.
place as one of
An
history's
unsolved
greatest
mystery that
enigmas. Continues to haunt history, leaving behind only questions, speculation, and the chilling shadow of an unknown killer.